Our Society Reborn, the Transformative Movement to End Systematic Oppression by Eliza Schultz and Juneau II.
And we must go from this convention and say, America, you must be born again.
Dr. Martin Luther King asked this question in his 1967 "Where do we go from here?" speech. Dr. King was addressing the systematic oppression of racism that deprived people of their basic human dignity and well-being, and he was calling for a transformative movement to change those systems. Today, systematic oppression continues to plague our society, and like Dr. King, we believe we are all morally obligated to be a part of the transformative movement to fix it.
So how does systematic oppression exist in our society today? Consider Mary, a working-class businesswoman and a single mother. She is paid an unequal wage in comparison to her male colleagues, and is not given government benefits to place her small infant in daycare. In this way, she suffers from what Iris Marion Young would define as exploitation. Now consider two males of equivalent educational status, Jerry and Jerome. Both Jerry and Jerome apply for the same job. Jerry is hired because his name is of Caucasian descent, while Jerome is not because his name is of African American heritage. In this way, Jerome suffers from systematic oppression in the form of marginalization. Mary wants to appeal to her congressman about her situation, but since only 17.9% of congressional seats are held by women, her voice is drowned out. As a result, Mary suffers from systematic oppression in the form of powerlessness. Every morning, Mary feels a great amount of pressure to adhere to impossible standards of beauty, which the media bombards her with in her daily life. In this way, Mary is a victim of cultural imperialism. As a black man, Jerome is much more likely to be a victim of police brutality in his lifetime than Jerry. As a result, he is a victim of systematic oppression in the form of violence. These are average law-abiding citizens who suffer from social constructs which oppress them. It is our goal and desire to transform society to alleviate these oppressive systems.
So why should we want to change these systems? One philosopher who recognizes systematic oppression but wrongly argues that we should not address it is Hardin. Hardin recognizes these systems of oppression through his lifeboat ethics, which present a situation in which there are people in a lifeboat that is nearly out of space, and many more people are drowning around it. According to Hardin, this is a bad situation that has two possible solutions. One, you could give up your space in the boat for someone else. However, this entails self-sacrifice, which Hardin argues makes it an impermissible option. Also, you could fill the lifeboat beyond capacity so that everyone can be in it. However, Hardin argues that this would cause the boat to sink and everyone to perish. Let's consider Hardin's lifeboat with Jerome's situation of being marginalized in the workplace. Hardin would argue that we shouldn't do anything to change that form of systematic oppression because it might cost Jerry his job. Thus, Hardin argues that there's no solution to these systems of oppression that doesn't come with a morally comparable cost.
Hardin believed that we should not change the oppressive systems that kept Jerome from getting hired, because a change could possibly cause Jerry to lose his job. Nonetheless, Hardin is wrong because he fails to recognize his Rawls' theory of justice. Rawls' theory of justice argues that 1. Every person has an equal right to basic liberties, and 2. Inequalities must be rearranged so that they are to the benefit of all. Rawls' theory rests on his abstract veil of ignorance, which removes people's arbitrariness when making decisions in regards to rights, policies, etc., when establishing the social order. The purpose of this would be to create systems that are not oppressive. If we consider Rawls' theory of justice with the marginalization of Jerome, then we see that he is being robbed of his basic liberty to pursue work, and by robbing society of his contribution, the inequalities arranged are not for the benefit of all. Therefore, we can agree that systematic oppression is morally impermissible behind the veil of ignorance. As a result, we have a moral responsibility to change those systems.
So according to Rawls, we have a moral responsibility to change these systems simply because they exist. However, we must consider the role each of us plays in perpetuating these systems. For example, by us not voting to remove the wage gap from which Mary suffers, we perpetuate that form of exploitation. Therefore, we are both morally responsible and culpable for systematic oppression. Pogge argues that systematic oppression should be addressed by large institutional groups rather than individuals. But we believe that since we are all culpable, that we all have a responsibility to address these issues. When utilizing Poge's argument, it is easy to separate ourselves from the problem. We, as college students, for example, are simply too young and hold too little political efficacy to inflict real change. Instead, we should look to the higher-ups, such as those employed in government agencies, to create the change necessary to ensure that people receive the justice that is right and fair. Young's argument counters that idea. She believes, and rightfully so, that we are all capable of change, and that even the most grassroots of movements, such as protesting the use of male and female identifiers on applications to remove the false binary of sex and gender which perpetuates sexism. Thus, we would argue that the culpability that Poge addresses is on individuals instead of institutions. Therefore, individuals, like us, are obligated to address poverty-related hardship.
Our proposed obligation to address poverty-related hardship stemming from systematic oppression rests on Singer's utilitarian principles. Singer does not specifically address systematic oppression, nor does he recognize the culpability involved, but his principles are still valuable in determining why we should address poverty-related hardship. The first premise of Singer's principle is that there must be a very bad situation. We believe that Jerome's risk of being a victim of police brutality represents a bad situation, and that if we stand together in a transformative movement, we can change that in a way that does not yield a morally comparable cost. Therefore, by Singer's principles, we are obligated to participate in this transformative movement.
Going back to Martin Luther King, we must embark on a transformative movement that recreates the systems of our society so that they can be free of oppression. In order to accomplish this, we must cultivate diversity, acceptance, empathy, strong community bonds, and a general love of humankind. As a result, we can bridge the divisions between the dominant and subordinate groups and disintegrate systematic oppression. Our combined responsibility and culpability associated with systematic oppression obligates us to be a part of this transformative movement. So get out there and engage in your community. Start to think about how systematic oppression exists in your community and how you can make a difference. Dr. King was right when he said that America must be born again, and only we can make that happen.